All right, welcome to the Cardano NFT Roundtable. This is an initiative between Cardano community members, NFT platform toolmakers, Cardano ambassadors, the NFT Guild, and the Cardano Foundation, coming together to discuss and align to common challenges and to identify and initiate solutions to support the healthy growth of the Cardano NFT ecosystem and its community. So, welcome. Today on the agenda, we have three presentations and a discussion. One about the Pol.is survey, which will come from Cent, and one from Philip and his work as the Guild CIP editor, and the third from Thomas Belacoop, one of who helped write CIP 67 and 68. So take it away from there, guys. Cent.
Thanks for that, Peter. I will share my screen. Can you see my screen? You saw my screen? Sorry.
Yep. Great. You're good. I can see it.
Stuff. So yes, and just going to go through a short presentation from a survey that we have published from the NFT Guild, and to go through some of the results, some initial, at least, results from this survey. So just some short facts. It was published 21st of July and went for approximately 2-3 weeks. It consisted of a total of 15 statements that were voted either against, agreed, or to be skipped. A total of 584 votes were cast. So what we did with the results we got back was to group them together according to how the respondents agreed, and that's when it comes to the percentage of agreement. There was also a solution inside of the voting app that made it possible for us to see when people were uniformly agreeing, or if they were in split agreement, so that somebody was agreeing and was disagreeing in the same, and then it was a so-called divisive vote. And then we have interpreted this and tried to transform this into some directions for our two projects. Yes, and this is the metrics that I talked about. You see how they were grouped. The top most ones, that was consensus. They have been labeled with C1 to C6, and the medium ones, M1 to M5, and divisive was the most divisive, is D1, and when it goes up again towards being agreement, then it's D3. I'm not going to go into all of these specific statements, but I've included them in the presentation so that you can view it on your own leisure. But these are the statements that were the top ones, meaning that they were above 90% agreement or higher. And you can also observe that the consensus was also high in this category. As we go further down, the agreement is still high, but the consensus is a bit lower. And yes, these are not bad results, but they are the lower part of the agreement scale for us. So we have used these results to get some directions, because we have talked about our proposals for some weeks now, and a short story about those. We are going to develop a standard for NFT verification, and we have also proposed to create a tool which is going to be open sourced and decentralized, available for everybody to make use of to verify NFTs on the Cardano chain. We also have an accompanying project called the NFT Royalty Standards, which is also some similar and which is worked on in collaboration with this. But these are the initial observations, and that the respondents, they agree that we need an open source decentralized tool for verifying NFTs. And they want that the NFT projects should be able to provide this verifiable data on chain, preferably, without being required to go through a centralized entity. Meaning not required, but they can. The tool and standards should be designed with all user groups' needs in mind. We should not only think about is this usable for the NFT marketplaces, but we also need to consider the artists and make it usable for them as well. Yeah. And the respondents also wanted us to be engaging in the development of this standard, and that is what we try to do with all of these meetings and the discussions that we have. In these areas, we did not reach any definitive directions. We have talked about to integrate royalty standards and NFT verification standard, but not necessarily said that we want to do that. But it was one of the statements, and no definitive answer was left on that. Yes, and the tool should be able to rely on multiple entities for verification, but it was not something that the respondents saw a clear reason for, at least according to the statement. They did not see that need. Can we actually reach full decentralized functionality, or is it possible to have centralized entities as well? Yes, we will not dive into that, but they are left for some discussions that we need to talk about in the future. We need to understand exactly what we mean when we say centralized entity, because simply being a company, is that bad, or is it only that you give users the possibility to publish their data to the chain, and then it's decentralized data? So is that a centralized solution, or is that a decentralized solution? So yeah, we also need to understand if the centralized entities should not be able to be part of this standard. Why so, at least, and why not? Yeah, so these are the topics that we should have in another discussion. more focused group to understand these topics. So yeah, that's what I had prepared.
Thank you, Sent. Awesome.
Yeah, thank you for that, Sent. Can you please share the link to the presentation in the meeting chat for the rest of the participants to be able to take a closer look at your slides? And we're also going to include them in the recording of this video.
Sure, thanks.
Sweet. All right, Philip.
Okay, thank you. Hold on, let me share my screen. Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay, okay. So let me give a short overview, right? What we wanted to do. We want to create a flexible, widely accepted NFT royalty standard that caters to the needs of buyers, project owners, intermediaries, and any other stakeholders in the Cardano ecosystem, right? So the idea is to have more options, but to not limit people and to not leave anyone behind. So currently what we have now is CIP 27. This was designed quite some time ago. And some of the features are, it doesn't include smart contracts. It was designed before smart contracts existed on Cardano. It's a simple mechanism. We just need to mint this royalty token. It's easy to interact with, but what is not possible, it's impossible to update the royalty fee, which was one of the common, asks from project creators. It's possible but difficult to pay royalties to multiple addresses. This would require sending the royalties first to a smart contract and then making a smart contract that automatically distributes it to multiple addresses. So it's not simple. Here in the presentation we have a link to CIP 27 if someone wants to go into more details about it. So we had a few meetings and we discussed some initial ideas on how to make things better. So we have about 6 potential solutions, and I have just the names, the ideas here, and we'll go through all of them shortly. Okay. So the first idea is create an NFT policy and keep it open. Mint a 777 token as specified in CIP 27 for royalties. So this is a royalty token. Burn and mint a new 777 token as needed. Instruct marketplaces to follow the last minted token instead of only the first one, and update the 777 standard to include more addresses, which would solve multi-address loyalty dispersion. What would be a pro of this? It's a very small change. Doesn't change the existing standard very much. We have updatable royalties and we have multi-address royalty dispersion. The cons are with this idea, it's necessary to keep the NFT policy open, which sometimes members of the community and projects would prefer to have the policy closed because it has implications that new NFTs can be minted and so on and so on. Sorry. There is a bit of added complexity for marketplaces because now marketplaces have to change their code to kind of scour for the latest minted 777 token instead of the first one. And there is no backwards compatibility for locked policy. So if your policy is locked, there's not much you can do. This doesn't help you a lot. So idea number 2 is to create a standardized royalty transaction. For example, send 3 ADA to yourself from from one wallet to that same wallet with a standard metadata containing an updated royalty fee, addresses to disperse these royalties to, and a message signed with the policy private key. Right, so if we have the policy, the NFT policy private key, we can sign a message with that private key, and anybody can check with the policy public key that that is really signed with the policy private key. The pros are we have updatable royalties, we have multi-address royalty dispersion, so we solve both of these problems, and we have backwards compatibility with all projects who didn't lose the policy private key, right? And we discussed this a little bit. This is, I think, the highest level of backwards compatibility that we can achieve. So if we have a project owner who doesn't own the policy private key anymore, we simply don't have an idea at the moment how we can include them, inside this new standard. The cons are, again, added complexity for marketplaces. This will always be the a con, because the complexity can be more or less complex, and this is a radical change from the current practice. So there will be a learning curve if this is implemented. Project owners will have to learn how to do this. Users will have to get used to it. Marketplaces will have to write new code. So it's a bit of a different way to go about it. Then we have the third idea. It basically says to create two policies. First one is the NFT policy, and within that NFT policy, to create a pointer to another NFT policy, and that another NFT policy is just for the royalties. In that way, the first NFT policy can be locked, and the users can see that it's locked and no additional NFTs can be minted. The second one can be just the royalty token, and that royalty token can be minted or burned as necessary, as described in idea 1. Now, this was just an initial idea, but after a little bit of thought, it is impossible to implement, because the way you create the policy ID for a new token, it's very standardized. You cannot just add you cannot just add you cannot just add a random thing to the JSON because of the serialization techniques currently in place. So we would have to change the whole serialization way and include IOG, so it's not really practical to do this. And the con is no backwards compatibility. So I just put this in as a thought experiment, but currently we cannot implement it. But this idea brought forth the idea 4, which is, again, we create an NFT policy, and then we create another policy that's called like a royalty policy, right? But inside the NFT policy, we mint a new standardized token. Like right now, we have this 777 token, that's for royalties. So I call this new one 776 token. And this 776 token points to another NFT policy, right? So this can be done currently. It's not a problem. It's not an issue. We make a small standard for the metadata of that token. That's nothing complicated. And it points to another policy that's a royalty policy. Okay, fine. So we can have the NFT policy locked, or we can have it open. It's it's the choice of the NFT creator. But the royalty policy is open, and it can mint and burn royalty tokens as necessary, like in idea 1. So still, marketplaces would have to follow the latest token that is created in the royalty policy. It is possible to have one royalty fee for the whole collection, or even if you want to go a step further, you can literally each single NFT can have a different royalty fee. I think that's an overkill, but it can be done. I would like to hear the opinions of the community about that. Pros are updatable royalty, multi-address royalty dispersion. We solve all of this. Backwards compatibility with all projects with open policy, right? So if you have an open policy, it's not a problem. You just mint this new token, and then it points to a new policy, and that's it. And you have this ability to update royalties with a locked NFT policy. Cons, it's added complexity for marketplaces, but there is no backwards compatibility with locked policy projects, right? So if your policy is locked, unfortunately, this idea doesn't help you too much. Idea 5, this is something we discussed last time. Mint a fungible token. Distribute royalties according to the percentage of the fungible token held to the wallet holding it. For example, you have your NFT policy, you have 100 fungible tokens of, something, 100 tokens. I have 20, Thomas has 50, Peter has 30. Every time a royalty is created, 20% automatically gets distributed to me, 50% to Thomas, 30% to Peter, and that's it. Fungible token is minted first and locked, and it points to the NFT policy. And in that way, it's kind of any kind of malpractice is prevented in that way. We have again multi-address royalty dispersion. We have full backwards compatibility. This is also maybe a problematic because you can mint a new token now and then point it to whatever policy you want. So this is something to be discussed, but it is an open, it's you can do this completely separately from the original policy. There is added complexity for marketplaces, and I don't think that we still work through an updatable royalty in this way. So this is something that if we choose to go this way, we can go deeper in how to have an updatable royalty with this idea. And the idea 6 is the final and the most complex idea. Is we can create a standard smart contract with parameters using inline datums, after Vasil goes on. Basically, we can cover this, I think, completely. Multi-address royalty dispersion, updatable, full backwards compatibility. Again, full backwards only with if you still have the private key of your policy script. The cons is it's a very complex development. Like this would have to be an open smart contract, publicly open sourced, audited. It's not a simple thing to do. The last time we talked, kind of our internal opinion was maybe it's a bit too early for that. Maybe we need this can be done maybe in a year or two, but in the meantime, maybe some simpler ideas would be better. That's it for me. I wrote down some questions here. So what ideas do we like? Can we combine more ideas into one? How do we keep it as simple as possible while not losing functionality? I don't know if we have time, but I'm gonna leave it to you, Peter. That's the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, Thomas, what do you think? What you said? You wanted to have a discussion, and if you want to follow up with this, that's fine. If you want to give us a rundown on some of your thoughts recently and go from there, that's great too. Let us know. Time is yours. Floor is yours.
Yeah, I think I can incorporate what Philip was saying in one of our standards. Like our standard encompasses multiple things, and perhaps the last idea that he proposes could be implemented in our standard CIP 67 or CIP 68. Yeah, so my idea for now was I will share my screen with a notebook where I can write, so I can visualize my ideas and just create a visual learning experience.
Thank you for that. Visuals are great.
Do you see a screen? Do you see me writing?
Yes.
Okay, that's great. So hello, well, I'm Thomas. Today I'm going to talk about CIP 67 and CIP 68 that Alexander and I are proposing to improve on the CIP 25 standard. So yeah, we propose two CIPs, and how I'm going to go about this is I'm going to abstract away from the technicalities. I'm just going to talk about concepts and design choices that we made to keep it, well, for everyone. Feel free to interrupt me if you have questions, like, I want to tackle those, so feel free to interrupt me and ask those. So yeah, let's start with the two CIPs. So firstly, we have CIP 67 and we have CIP 68. CIP 67 is a classification CIP. It tries to It tries to classify tokens via their names and the type of tokens. So you can have like different kinds of tokens. You have NFTs, you have fungible tokens, you might have fractionalized NFTs or anything that might come in the future. And all these assets are encoded in native tokens on Cardano, and native tokens do not capture these things, like what it is. They only capture a transferability. So what you would like is to have a classification of these tokens in their names, so that when a wallet sees that token, the wallet knows, this is this kind of token, I should see it this way. So that wallets or third parties don't have to fetch all kind of, or try to fetch all kind of data and try to put a standard on it, like by trial and error. So if the classification is done in the token name, you immediately know, given a token, what it is. So that's what CIP 67 tries to do, that's classification. And then we have CIP 68, and that's metadata. So besides what things are, you also need to write on chain what tokens bring. So which extra data, what additional data. What this CIP does is it splits the token in the place where the metadata is stored away from the value of the token. So while the CIP 67 encodes what the value may be, so say you buy an NFT, then CIP 67 encodes that in your wallet. So you have a token which is encoded via CIP 67. But that name also implies some other token, and that is what we call a reference token in the CIP 68. And this CIP, this reference token uses datums and scripts to hold the metadata. So what the idea is that with this CIP 68, you can add a datum to a UTXO where you hold the metadata, and the metadata is the same as CIP, or it's similar to CIP 25, but it's only encoded via Pol.is, so in a datum. What the nice things about this are is that you have Pol.is available for your metadata, so you can write logic on top of it. You can write minting policies that check certain things for the datums and stuff like that. So that is the goal of bringing the metadata into Pol.is. And also a nice feature is that this datum is in the active part of the chain, the ledger. And what I mean by that is that when we have a UTXO graph, so like we have all these outputs and inputs, I'm gonna draw that, all these kinds of inputs, then the datum is stored at a input and not in the history of the chain. So you might have like a whole tree of all kind of entries. And the neat thing of this SIP is that data is always at the edge. And what this allows you to do is to reference them. So when Faisal comes, you have reference inputs, and you can reference that data and bring it again into another footage SIP. So you can do all cool things with your metadata. Yeah, so how this works in a little bit more detail, combining SIP 68 and SIP 67. When we have a token, we encode it by a classifying prefix. And this is currently done by brackets. So when you have a token name, you classify it by some number here, and then the token name. So when the wallet sees this, well, it will see this prefix, and it will say, okay, I know that is something that follows SIP 67. So I know I should interpret it as a classifying token. We also define in our SIPs two standards, because we have all kinds of tokens already. We define standard 222, that's for NFTs. And we define standard 333, and that's for fungible tokens. And I might have switched these around, I'm not sure. But so what the idea is, so say you have an NFT with a token name in your wallet checks the token name, sees this value in front of it. It immediately knows, oh, that's an NFT. I should fetch the metadata. And this is where the reference tokens comes in. So within the same policy of the NFTs, you also mint another token that is the reference token, and that takes this form. Oh, sorry, that's wrong. Token name. And when the wallet sees this token, it knows that the token that holds the data takes the form of the same name. So that's this part, but with the standard 100. So it can deterministically query the chain, where is token 100, and then the token name, and it can fetch the datum that is accompanying the UTXO that holds that token. So you don't need to search the history of the chain. You can only search you only have to search the active part of the chain. So the search is less cumbersome and well-defined. So let's compare this how SIP 25 does this. So SIP 25 does something similar with the metadata. It attaches it to the transactional metadata. But the problem with that is that this is when you put a transaction on the chain, it is not at the active part of the chain, but it's in the history. So you can still retrieve it by looking where the minting transaction was, and then you can see what was the transactional data, the metadata there, and then you can retrieve the data. But this is a bit more cumbersome, and besides, this conflates the creator of the token or the NFT together with the person who mints it. And that's a big problem, because we live in we are active on a decentralized chain, and it might be that tokens that are minted via logic and not via permission. And when you mint via logic, you cannot enforce logic on the metadata, the transactional metadata. And so the problem with SIP 25 is that when you have tokens that can be that are minted via logic and not via a permission with a signature or something, you can inject metadata according to SIP 25 into that token. So as an example, you might have a liquidity token by a DEX and you put tokens in and you get liquidity tokens back, and that could be in the same transaction, then the DEX has no way of enforcing that you do not inject data into that transaction according to CIP 25, and thus changing the last known metadata of that token. So when you go to well, some chain indexer and you will look at the new or the metadata, or at least how it's interpreted of that liquidity token, you will see new metadata injected by the last mint. And that's of course troublesome, because as we go further with the possibilities we have on chain, this will give rise to problems. So this is what CIP 68 and CIP 67 solve. Yeah, by not conflating these two. So you can enforce via Pol.is the minting transaction because data is in the datum, and thus you have it in Pol.is, and thus you can enforce it via Pol.is what is minted and in which way. And that's the neat part. And note that in my example I gave something with the NFT, but this standard doesn't explicitly focus on NFTs, also for fungible tokens, and this could also be for other tokens. So yeah, that's the idea. Any questions?
If I may, Thomas.
Yeah, sure.
Blake also asked a question earlier about the, and just to wrap it up thing, he asked the question, how would someone find a standardized royalty transaction on chain? Right, from my idea too, and this is what you mentioned now. If we go that way, he would have to scour the history of the chain using an indexer like DBSync or Ogmios or something, which is cumbersome, like you said. It's another piece of software. You have to fill up a database. You have to know what you're looking for. It's a bit more complicated. But my question is, with these inline datums, are you saying that the current, let's say the current version, the current snapshot of the blockchain has this data? So theoretically, I can find them through CLI, not with, I don't need a chain indexer to find this data?
The last statement is correct. Yeah, you can use the CLI. Yeah, but you still need to know where the token is. So the location of the token is not derived from, you still need, I don't think the client can do that, right? It cannot search a token right now.
Okay, but let's say I know which address has it. Let's say.
Then you can. Yeah.
Then I can see the data. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
So given your idea, you could introduce like a standard like 777 for the royalty standards.
Yeah.
And then you could call a token by its token name.
Mm-hmm.
And you can put this token at some script address that defines the logic on how it's spendable. It could be that you could update the royalty token, or you could update the data associated with this standard. That's all to the developer. The CIP doesn't specify that where it's stored. You could also store it at a public key. That's fine as well. That's up to the developer. But you could do something similar with the royalty standard. Yeah. So then you would define a 777 standard, for example. And how would you find this token? When you get an NFT, you remove the prefix of the 222, you add the prefix 777, and you search for that token on chain. You look up the datum, and there is the data that you need for the royalty standard, if there is a royalty standard, because I did not define that. So yeah, these two CIPs encompasses all these kind of tokens, like identity tokens. I saw that you were all looking at those as well. These could be incorporated as well in this structure. So it's more of a framework than just a standard for just a singular token. Thanks for the question.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I also have a question. There has been some talk about doubling the expenses for the NFT projects with all of the reference NFTs. Could you please comment on that as well?
Yeah, so I want to tackle that one as well, because a lot of people have the idea that when you send UTXO to a script, you lock them indefinitely. That is not true. So in this SIP or this framework, you send the reference token to a location that holds the data. And this could be locked indefinitely. That could be. But since you send it to an address, you have to pay a minimum fee or a minimum, you have to deposit, that's a better word, you have to deposit a minimum amount of ADA to store your data there, as long as you want the data available in the active part of the chain. So that's what people are talking about, that fee. But that doesn't mean that it's unspendable. That's up to the developer. So there's this parameter in the protocol that states the minimum amount of ADA that you have to lock up in the in a UTXO for it to be available in the active part. And this could change over the years, of course, because the value of ADA could increase. What you could do is you could send it to a script that allows you to send it again to the same script, but the token should still be sent to the same script. And that's the only thing you ask of it. Then this allows you to extract the ADA, or at least the ADA, the excess ADA, if the minimum amount was lowered. So that tackles it. But you could also make it that both the reference NFT and the token NFT, so the asset, so the either one of those can be burned together and only together, so that you can remove the data off chain. And you can even make it that they can be minted again by somebody else. So there's a lot of flexibility in the standard, and it doesn't define that. So I get where the question comes from, but it's not necessarily valid in the sense that it's not a problem. It's just how Cardano is and how you have to structure your data on the chain. I hope that answers it.
Yeah, thanks. Just another comment, because for the non-fungible tokens, there is one single reference NFT because the metadata is shared, or it's only one metadata for the token. Could a similar approach been done for a collection of NFTs, for example, if you introduce hash, or not hash, I meant regular expressions for the token name?
Yeah, could you make that more explicit, please? Did that question get the question?
Yeah. Could it be possible to have, for example, NFT collection that you know that every NFT is going to have about the same metadata? Could you use a regular expression for the token name instead of having one reference NFT for each NFT?
That's a good question. The current standard doesn't cover that, but I see no reason why it cannot be. But I do not know if it's a smart idea to do that.
No. I'm just putting the idea out.
Yeah, of course, yeah. The framework is flexible as it is. So, like for now, we have these two standards defined, but more standards could come. So you could define like an 888 that does this, right? Yeah. So it's imaginable, of course. Yeah. Why not? You could define it. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Thomas, just wanted to ask you, if I remember, 68 is now pushed forward in the CIP process, right? What about 67?
Yeah, so that's not being pushed forward. That's because, Alessandro and I, and also other SIP editors, are not, we're not agreeing on what this prefix should be, and what size it should be, and what form. And that's a discussion that's still going on. So in our initial SIP, we gave this as an example, or as an initial proposal, but we have come, we developed a new one already. And so how you want to design this is the following. So CIP25 has this problem that token creators do not opt in the standard. So when I create a token and I specify a minting policy, if I do not close all the holes for this new standard, then others could inject data in my token, and that's something you do not want. So what you want for this token naming, this prefix, you want to make it as obscure as possible, or at least that someone cannot accidentally add this prefix in a token name. Because if they accidentally use this prefix, a wallet will interpret it as a certain token, and without their permission or their intent. That's a bad design. It's metadata injection. So what you want is you want to make this prefix as obscure as possible. So this of course is readable, but it's really easy to copy at least. So there are now ideas about encoding it just in binary, keeping it small, and adding some checksum to it, so that people really need to take steps to encode their token name in this standard. So that's the reason why it's not pushed forward, because this is not settled yet.
Okay, I understand.
Going back a bit to the question of the locked funds, so is it still possible to recover the funds after closing the policy? So let's say I want to have a collection of NFTs, for instance, with a closed policy, or even of fungible tokens with a closed unmodifiable policy. Would it still be possible to burn the reference tokens and extract the ADA locked after closing it or during the close?
Yeah, it depends on the script where it's sent to. It's not dependent on the policy script. So if the script that holds the reference NFT allows you to spend it in some way, then it's spendable. So it depends on the logic that's written there, but our SIP doesn't specify that. So I would be inclined to specify at least something like, what I mentioned. If the minimum ADA locked at such an address is lowered, then you should be able to take that ADA out, something like that. And maybe you want to make that permission that only a certain key can do that, or when the signature is put in, it can be spent as well, but that removes the data, of course, from the script. But there's arbitrary logic that you can put on it, like it's not defined. So yes, that's possible.
Yeah, because I'm viewing things not even from the perspective of cost to the creator, but let's look at it from the perspective of health of the chain, right? We don't want to end up in a situation where hundreds of millions of ADA are essentially locked in, let's say, a couple of decades down the line because people wanted to lock their policies. So essentially what you're saying is that logic can be put into in case the minimum fee that needs to be locked in the future decreases, the ADA can still be unlocked from a essentially otherwise locked policy.
Yeah, well, my personal opinion is that I would prefer the same, that it is retrievable by some mechanism. I would prefer burning the NFT, because then every NFT has a intrinsic value to it, namely the ADA locked. But it's up to the developer. If the developer doesn't want that, that's okay as well. Like the standard doesn't specify that. If a creator says that, I want to keep it locked forever, so that it will under no circumstances that it's moved, then that's okay as well. It's up to the creator. Who am I to impose that on them? So the SIP tries to keeps it as flexible as possible, but like I said, my personal opinion would be the same. Like, think about it.
But if it's locked forever, then it's not burnable or recoverable anymore.
Yeah, that's true.
Right.
And that's why my personal opinion would be the same as yours. Like, make it so that it's not locked forever. But yeah, it's free for the developer that creates the token to decide that, because yeah, it's a permissionless chain and the standard should be as well. If they want that, that's their choice.
Yeah, but like we discussed in our previous meeting, there is a possibility that enough creators want that, especially with NFTs, because they're essentially making artworks not changeable in the future and guaranteeing that they're not changeable. So we could still end up with a situation where, like I said, hundreds of millions of ADA are essentially
okay, and
lost
to those,
from.
that's a good concern, and of course, and to those creators, I would say, make a script that holds the reference NFT that allows you to lower the ADA locked when the parameter is changed, and that you can extract the excess funds. Then the data is still there, and you can still impose that the datum doesn't change, so the data is still there. So, but again, this is a decision that the maker should have. Like, yeah, I'm all for keeping funds not locked and extracting value when it is possible, but the standard doesn't describe that, and it shouldn't.
Thanks for clarifying that.
Yeah, no problem.
In the CIP, you have an image that refers to, like you said, multiple possible tokens beyond fungible tokens and NFTs. So as we discussed, royalty tokens or verification tokens. Can you please elaborate a bit on that, and what would the potential integrations with this?
Yeah, I will get the image. Can I just? I'll just get the SIP. So you see the SIP right now in the image as well. Am I correct? You're seeing the
yes,
GitHub, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So as I said, like, this allows you to. This standard does allow you to introduce new
Can you zoom in a
standards.
bit on the image? Sorry to interrupt.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, no problem. So as I said, standards may come up while your NFT is already created, perhaps, or your other token that you're creating. What you might want is, because our SIP relies on using the same policy ID, you might want a policy that is made with Plutus, with logic, that allows to mint new standards as they come up. And that's what this image describes. So this is something Alessandro made, and it's nice. It's a nice overview of how to do it. So over here we have the main minting policy, and that derives, or from that the token policy is derived, like the policy ID. And from it you can mint the collection that's here, and then you see that the NFT is at the user wallet. It has the prefix 222, and this prefix could change. And it has the reference NFT at some locked script or public key, it doesn't matter, together with the metadata accompanying this NFT. And for each NFT, such a reference script exists. So that's the idea of SIP 68. Besides its policy, you write logic that allows you to mint new tokens under that policy, but only with new prefixes, because the prefix is defined in the classification. You can make a policy so that it never mints again something under the prefix 222 or 100, keeping the NFT policy or NFT closed. So then you can never create new NFTs, but you can create new policies or new standards. Sorry. So this is a registry UTXO that holds like a datum with in it a database of possible numbers, and it checks if something is minted already. And for example, the 444 token is already minted, but the 555 is not minted yet. And it could be that this is not defined this standard yet. What you could do is, as long as this database is not updated, that the token is not minted, the policy script allows you to introduce new tokens that mint with that prefix, according to the logic that's needed there. So that's what this image tries to show. And for example, here a royalty standard is minted with prefix 444. But note we did not define this royalty standard in the CIP. So it's just an example. So yeah, that's the idea. Questions?
Thanks for clarifying that.
No more questions? Well, I hope I got everything across, and thanks for listening then.
Thank you. Very nice.
I think we can wrap up the call for today. It was certainly packed full of information. Like we said in the beginning, we're probably going to allocate a separate roundtable event for deeper discussion into the topics that Sent brought up and examining the data that resulted from the survey, and definitely another roundtable discussion around the evolving royalty standard, and possibly even a continuation of your CIP 68 presentation, Thomas, if you're willing to come on to a future meeting, which will hopefully be more of an open discussion instead of a presentation. So thanks again, everyone, for your great presentations today, and have a great rest of your day and week.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Yeah, likewise.
nice one.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.